Olá, bem-vindos a mais um episódio do Despertar em Consciência. Hoje eu tenho o prazer de ter como convidada a Audrey Besson Levine e esta entrevista será feita em inglês. Hello, Audrey. Audrey is
Hi.
a coach specialized in parenting and children emotional skills. And she also created the program Emotionally Intelligent Kids. And today we will talk about conscious parenting. Hello, Audrey, welcome. And
Hi,
thank you so much for having accepted my invitation to be here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be with you, and I'll try to answer the question you have the best I can.
Oh, of course you will. What is this about conscious parenting? How did this idea or this needs came for you?
So, conscious parenting is, as opposed to what you would call traditional parenting, although there's no right or wrong parenting because they don't come with a manual, unfortunately. But conscious parenting is really about making a conscious decision about how you're going to react or respond, shall I say, to your child's behavior. So it's really it's about responding versus then reacting. It's about raising ourselves so we can better raise our kids, and it's about becoming more aware of your own feelings, your own triggers, your body sensation even, so you gain the ability to actually choose how you want to respond to your child's behavior rather than being completely hijacked by your emotions.
Okay, so in your opinion, and I think that's how the whole project is based, is working with the parents' emotions in a way that they understand what their children are triggering them the whole time.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think the working with the parents is the best start, because what we sometimes don't realize is we get into pattern with our children, and then we have the feeling that it's, he's trying to trigger me, or he's trying to like if our children were getting at us. But a lot of the time it's actually our own trigger, and our kids are not here to make us miserable. They're not trying consciously to make us miserable. They're just asking for help in the way they can. And the more we identify what our own triggers are and why we're reacting a certain way, because if you take the time and you take a step back, you'll see that a lot of the time we react in a certain way to the same things, and you get into pattern with your children. If you take a step back and learn what triggers me, why do I react like that, and then you can be more aware, then you can have a different response, and you actually can help your child, because he's not trying to give you a hard time, he's actually having a hard time.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to have that consciousness, that awareness, that usually children are also a reflection of their emotions mixed with their parents' emotions. And so sometimes they are acting in a way that just annoys their parents, but they are seeking for help. They are trying to also understand what's happening to them. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And they mirror us. So you can talk and do, like lecture your kids all you want. But at the end of the day, what they do is they model what they're seeing. They'll, you can tell them what you expect, you can tell them, but they're going to look at you and they're going to model what they see. So if you want to teach them kindness, you need to show them, you need to model it. If you want to show them respect, you need to model it. And if you want to show them that they need to manage the emotion in a calm way, you need to show them. So if every time they do something you react and you're being hijacked by your emotion and you start screaming and yelling, you can't really expect that your kids, when they're having a hard time with their own emotion, to react calmly if they don't have a role to how to do that.
Okay, so in this approach, what are the main challenges that you usually identify if there is a pattern?
So the I would say the main challenging is to change our belief, because I think it's a little bit of a new paradigm in parenting. When we, if you look at generation before us, and partly because there was not a lot of as much knowledge available to our parents or our grandparents. I mean, there's a lot of progress that has been done in psychology, in neurology, about how the brain of the child function. A lot of the time we expect our kids to do things they're not even able to do. Physiologically, they cannot do. So we just get frustrated because they answer a certain way, but their brain is just not there to actually answer any other way. So there's been a lot of progress that has been done. And so I think one of the main challenge to start with is to change our belief, because I think that a lot of the time we have a belief that, well, I'm the parent and I'm in charge, and because I say so. And yeah, of course you're in charge. Of course your child needs guidance. Of course your child needs boundaries. So conscious parenting is not about letting everything go and the kids can do anything. No, there is boundaries. There is, the parents is in charge, but it's just done in a different way. It's done with empathy. It's done coming from love and not coming from fear. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is really starting to change our own belief. But yeah, you can raise your kid without yelling and screaming. It's actually possible. I'm not saying that you have to be a perfect parent. I'm not saying that I don't lose it with my kids sometimes. I still do, but it's just keep trying to wear this awareness inside you so you can raise it in your family. So yeah, changing this belief about what being the parent means, I think, is a big thing. And then accept this idea that sometimes our kids trigger us because there's a button to push. So what is that button? Where is that coming from? Can I switch that? Can I change that? Is it not, it's not just my kids having the issue, but maybe I am also need to look at myself and change something.
When was in your life, when was the turning point for you to feel that it was important to have this awareness, to have this conscious parenting? You are a mother of 4. So when did it come to you? When did you realize that it was important to change?
It actually, I must say, the turning point or finding something that really resonated with me was since I came here, which was almost 5.5 years ago. But when I had my son, I read some of the books and I read a lot of different books, but there was nothing that was like, well, that's not our, there was nothing that was resonating with me. There was nothing that was, that I was like, yeah, that there was nothing that was like, well, that's how I want to raise my kids. But I kept trying and I kept feeling that I was just struggling. I just didn't find, and then the girls came along, and then I arrived here and I actually joined a conscious parenting group with Aziza, who's a practitioner here. And then I've started to do a lot of classes as well. I was already a certified coach from the US. I was doing more executive coaching. And then I did another training. And then I've started to go into, having done that workshop, it really talked to me. So I've started to read a lot of books and did a lot of courses. So the famous in the US, like Dr. Markham, Dr. Sheffield, Laurie Petro. And I was like, oh, wow, that really, really talks to me. That is something that I can do at home, and that makes sense to me. And that's how I would love to be able to raise my kids.
Well, that's really interesting because, sometimes people have the tools, but because they make several courses, they read lots of books, but then they have a resistance to put that in practice. So it's great that you were able to resonate with what was saying, and that you also wanted to do that in your life with your kids. So you started with your kids, and then how did it come for you, the need to bring this to other people?
Well, I was so excited about having found something that resonated with me, and that worked most of the time. Again, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm still not doing what I would like to do. It's a long. It takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. Um, but I was just so excited about it, because for me it's like, wow, if we can bring that to our children, we're building the next generation, right? If we can bring our kids in a way that we teach them how to be, we teach them emotional intelligence. Basically, we teach them to be aware of the emotion, we teach them that it's okay to have emotions, and we teach them to accept them without judgment, but we just teach them how to deal with it, like how to give them tools so they can manage it, but not judging or not shaming or blaming. I was just so excited about it that I decided I wanted to share it with the rest of the world. So first I started with one of my friends who started to give workshop, and that was that we had great response. Um, and then I was like, wow, okay, so the workshop with parents is great. I also do one-on-one coaching, because it's one thing that, you know, you get the principle and you learn about what's the philosophy behind, but then to actually go to practice, sometimes it's nice to have someone to hold you accountable and to give you tips that are like specific to your family, because every kid is different, so it's not like there's one fit for all. um, and also we have different belief and value for each family, so it's not, you know, what might work for my family might not work for your family, because of course there's, you know, you need to take into consideration that everybody is different, and you need to get the tools that work for you. um, and then at the same time I thought, well, you know, what about our kids spend a lot of time at school, so what about school, like what about educating some of the teachers, or bringing some of it to the teachers. So I've started to develop a little bit of teachers training, but that's pretty new. And then I've done some also like playful workshop for children, just to get them familiar with the different types of emotion, and some tools that, you know, what happened when you get upset, what happened, why you worried, what's happening, and also try to develop also for them understanding what's happening in their body and in their brain, because a lot of the time it's children to understand that part of their reaction is not actually because they're bad children or because they have a bad behavior. It's just the way they're wired, and that's how, you know, when a child gets anxious or angry, they go into fight or freeze. It's just physiologic. It's not whether they're good or bad. It's just what happened in the brain. So it's nice to educate them as well about what's happening and the tools that are available to them to be able to manage that through with time and practice in a calmer way.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned school, because it's something that I have been talking to several people about. That unfortunately, the way the children are taught hasn't changed much for the past, I would say, like 200 years. And I'm not exaggerating. So you still have a teacher lecturing, and for a group of children, and children are taught to use their rational minds. They are never taught to use their emotional minds. They are not taught to use their emotions. They are not taught to get in touch with their emotions. So I think it's great that you mentioned that, even if it's a startup project, to have the children, the teachers, and also school to be aware of this, it's great. Uh, have you started with any teachers? Do they have a response to that?
So, well, the program that was starting, unfortunately, because of the lockdown, we had to postpone because it's nicer to do. So we had to postpone. Yes, there are. The good news is school are starting to be really open to those ideas, to bring some more emotional training within the school. I mean, the schools that my kids go to, I feel there is more awareness, that at least when I was going to school. But I agree with you. I agree that it's still a lot of schools are still teaching in a very traditional way. And what I love to say, I've got it in my presentation, is like, for me, what's going to help children thrive in that next generation. I mean, a lot of the jobs that are here today are not going to necessarily be there for them in the future. We don't know what it's going to be, the landscape is going to be there, what it's going to be like. And a lot of the things that are available today means that education should be evolving at the same time as the rest of the world is evolving. And so for me, accumulation of knowledge is not necessarily the only thing that's going to make them thrive in life. And I think EQ is starting to be as important as IQ. And I've got in one of my presentations when I send it out to parents, it just says like, it's great if children can do the most advanced math problem or speak 3 languages, but then if they can't manage the emotion, practice conflict resolution, and handle stress, then what all of this knowledge is going to be there for? So I really, really believe education. There's a strong need for education to evolve, and I do agree that I don't think it's been evolving much across the world, because I've been living in many different countries, and unfortunately it's very similar. There's some difference, but not as much as you would like to see. Now, what I find encouraging is I see it starting to happen here and there.
Wow, that's great. Do you also think that some values, some ways of thinking, society-wise, need to change? I will just give you this example. Like, boys are told you have to be strong, you cannot cry, for instance. And do you think that this awareness of this change of values is happening, or it's still on a building project?
That is a tough one, because also those values are going to change so much depending on which culture you're from and which, what you're being told in your family. But again, if you bring that awareness that an emotion is an emotion, of course a boy is going to be as can be sad like a girl can be, and the way he's going to express it, it's human being, it's physiologic, it's something that comes. An emotion comes, you don't choose. You can choose how you're going to react to an emotion, but you can't choose which emotion is coming up. And so to say a boy can't cry, it's like a boy can't be sad, it's like teaching a boy, well, basically there's something that's going to come up in my body, but I can't have it. So imagine what you create, like what kind of dilemma you create, saying, well, you can't, but it's happening. Especially when they're little, they're a lot more, they don't have all those limiting belief around them, where it's like, well, it's happening. And of course it's happening, because emotion is an emotion. You cannot control an emotion. The only control you have is what choices you're going to make when that emotion comes up. And the more we teach our children to be aware of that, saying, hey, it's okay, you have that emotion, there's no shaming or blaming around the emotion itself, but let me help you figure out what's the best way to deal with it. And it's not going to happen overnight, of course, and it's going to take time. But imagine if you start early, what you get when you get older kids that know how to do that, know how to deal, be able to say, well, I feel really frustrated right now, I'm going to take time off. I'm going to go, outside for 5 minutes so I can come down and then I can talk in a calmer way. Imagine the impact that it can have in the next generation if we start early with our children.
Oh, I'm sure that emotional, intelligent kids, after a period of time, become emotionally intelligent adults. And that can change, hopefully, yes, but in my vision, that can change the world, even by the way of how it's ruled. The politics can be different. The awareness that people have towards nature, towards human relations. Do you think that that can have a huge impact in society in a few years?
That's the greatest hope, isn't it? It's just like, if you raise generations of children who are aware and who can handle and who can handle any kind of emotion, which means who can handle jealousy, who can handle, because again, jealousy, yeah, okay, you're jealous, I get it, you're jealous, you feel that mommy prefers your little brother, yeah, I get it, if there's a dialogue around it, if there's no just shame about it, then you teach them to handle that too. So you teach your kids to manage all kind of different emotion. And so of course the hope is that when they become adults, then you live in a world that's a lot more harmonious, because you can there's more awareness, there's room and space for open dialogue about what's going on. And with awareness can we change, like if you're able to identify, let's take jealousy as the example. If you're able to identify without having been blamed or shamed during your childhood that, oh, I can be jealous, that's a possibility, and that's okay, and this is how I've been taught to deal with it in a healthy way, then imagine how it would change as adult as well, right? But being able to say, you know what, Patricia, we're working together, but you know what, I think I was jealous, and this is how I reacted, and that opens a dialogue versus keeping it in and trying to sort it out in ways that are probably not going to be so healthy.
Yeah.
And that goes with a lot of different emotions. So the goal to, eventually the hope is that you function in a world that would be a lot more harmonious, because there would be a lot more awareness and dialogue and connection.
Yeah, all of that is I think it's really important. And you also mentioned a bit before that things are starting to change. Even people look at the world and want it to be different. Jobs won't be the same. People are not willing to live the life in the same way. Even in our generation, there has been so many people that change their lives. I'm an example of that. I think you are an example of that too. You worked in finances and management and business for many years, and now you are a coach for emotional intelligence, which is great. And so I think that if we can raise our children in a more loving way, letting them be who they really are, I think that's really great. Audrey, you told me that you give a one-on-one coach, but you also do workshops. And I read in your website that you also do retreats, that I'm sure that now they are stopped due to the lockdown. But can you tell me a little bit about your projects, Emotionally Intelligent Kids?
Yeah, so the workshop, so I talked a bit about the workshop. So we were doing the workshop with small groups of parents. I'm trying to find a way now, because I've been having some demand. So I'm trying to find a way to do it online in a more fun way. It's just not the same, right? Online and in person. The retreats, again, we had this project of doing a retreat, which we had to cancel because of COVID. It was the idea of doing a family retreat where it would be a mix of parenting classes, fun time with, I was doing that with some of my partners, doing a family retreat with fun stuff for the kids. So the kids would have some green forest adventure, what the parents would be doing the parenting class. And then we would have some emotional intelligence class for the kids. So it was like a long weekend where everybody would have their own time, their fun time, and also a little bit of learning time. And then I did a retreat for like preteen over Christmas that I could do. We were still able to do that. And same thing, that one was a mix of physical exercise, which I did with a friend of mine, Danny Van Dyke, who's a PE teacher. And he's done this program, Rock and Water, that talks about, it's all about body awareness and teaching kids how they can make a choice and make choices, whether to, stand like a rock or flow like water. And it's about body awareness as well, about what you want to send as a message to the outside world. And then Anne Orman was doing the creative part, and then I was doing the emotional intelligent part, and we had so much fun. We had 8 kids between 11 and 12 years old. We ended up having just girls, but they really bonded, and it was just a mix of literally mixing between physical fun exercise, music and choreography and discussion and the learning about how the brain works, what we worry, but also having great playful game and discussion around all those emotional intelligence topics.
Well,
so we hope to do more. Yeah, I hope to do more, especially when we can all be together again.
No, that's great. If I was 11 or 12, I would certainly would love to have done a program like that. Audrey, I don't know if I can put the question this way, but which tools do you usually use to help kids and their parents?
So the parents, it's the parents, it's just one-on-one coaching. So I've got a bunch of coaching tools, but it's also a lot of discussion about what's going on in the family. Do they need help? And again, it's not telling them what to do, what not to do, but to find together, where do they want to head? What do they, and it's, at the end of the day, it's also a lot of work on themselves, because at the end of the day, I can give you as many tools as you want, but again, you need to be prepared to go and look inside, which is what I help with as well. Are you even aware of what is triggering you? Can I helping them figure out what's the pattern and where is it coming from? Because sometimes just the awareness change to completely switch things around. With children, there's a mix of like just information, like a lot of play, because for the kids it needs to be playful, otherwise you can't keep them focused for too long. So I've got card games, I've got like puzzles, I've got things that we do a little bit of the theory, of the philosophy, and then we play around using some games.
That's great. Do parents are admired by the needs to raise their children in a more emotional way?
What I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, let me put the question in a different way. Do parents are they still resisting to this emotional approach and trying to raise their children in that way, rather than traditional parenting that was I'm the one who knows, I'm the one who tells you what to do, and you just shut up and you obey?
So I think those parents will probably never book the first appointment with me, because it's just not going to resonate. And I get that. I'm not, again, it's like there's no right or wrong parenting. It's whatever, if that's what you believe, if that's what you truly believe and you've been raised like that and it's been working for you, I'm not the one who's going to tell you no, you should do differently, because I think you should do what works for you and for your family and what feels flowing and harmonious. If it's working like that and it's harmonious and it's great, awesome. So I would say that the parents who are going to be attracted to what I'm preaching are going to be the ones who are ready to change a little bit the old paradigm about parenting. Now, do you still have some resistance? Absolutely, of course you do, because it's scary. There's a part of it that's scary, and a lot of the time what happened with our kids is when we start to get upset and angry, we come from fear, because we make all those stories around, like we see a behavior and we're like, oh my God, if he's like that at 7, what is he going to be at 15? And then you start going and you make all these stories into your head about what's going to happen if you don't stop it right now, right then, versus taking a step back, taking a deep breath and saying, what is my kids trying to tell me? Because as I always say, behavior is communication. So if your kid is acting a certain way, it's just trying to tell you something that is not, it doesn't have the means to tell you in, mommy, I need this, or mommy, I need, it's just going to act up. If he has, it's usually when a child is acting up, it's usually because a need is not met. And so that's, and so you have two ways to deal with it. You can look at it saying, my child is acting up and I'm coming a bit from fear, saying, oh my God, I've got to stop right now, because what does it mean if my kids act that way? And you're just going to go the forceful way. And sure, you can probably with fear, impose certain you can react in a certain way that your kid's going to stop right away, and he's going to not to stop when you start raising your voice, or he's going to. But is his needs still going to, are you going to answer the fundamental problem that's under the behavior? Or you can just take a deep breath, don't take it personally, and think, okay, what is my child need right now? And how can I help him? Because I'm the adult, he's the child, and he's got a need that's not met, and he doesn't know how to express it any other way. That doesn't mean you don't need to address the behavior. It doesn't mean that if your kid is behaving, you don't, address it, because you do want to set boundaries. And of course, you want to teach your kids that they don't roll on the floor and start screaming their head off every time there's something wrong. But you don't address it at the moment it happens, because first of all, at the moment it happens, your kid's brain is in such a state that you can start screaming all you want, you won't be able to listen. If it is neurologically, it won't be able to answer or listen to you. And what's going to happen is you're probably going to get triggered, and then both of your brains are like in fight mode, and it's just a screaming context, and nobody wins. So it's just, again, learning, just taking a step back, taking a deep breath, trying to reframe and your child's behavior, saying, what is it that he needs right now? How can I help him? And then you can still address the behavior, but it's almost connecting before correcting, as I would say. But sorry, I think I got like carried away. Your question was do parents, is there still some resistance? Of course there's still, because it's still, and again, even me in my own family, when I get, when I still react, we a lot of the time come from fear. I'm like, oh my God, I can't let that happen. What does it mean? What is it going to mean in 10 years time if he's like that now? And no, it's not. It's not, being present in the moment and addressing what happened. But there's always a bit of resistance, because it can be scary. It can be scary when your kids have huge feelings and you being told, no, he needs a hug right now. He doesn't need him to lecture him or her.
Yeah.
That's not what we've been taught, and that's probably not how we've been raised for most of us.
No, of course, and I think sometimes there is also a clash of generations, that we were raised in a certain way, and now, even when we want to do it different, sometimes we don't know how. So it's important to look for people like you to help parents to know how. It's to give them the tools, because I think that if the will is there, they will find a way to look for answers, and that's when coaches like you step in. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's the idea. Is to explore what do I do? And usually family will come saying, I'm struggling with a certain things, there's something happening, and it's usually a pattern, and it's exploring, okay, well, this is what, but it's an exploration, it's a journey with the parents and the coach to understand, well, what do you think? It's helping the parents decode what is the child trying to say, and trying to identify what's going on in the dynamic of the family that could be leading to that. And a lot of the time, so one of the things is, there can be a couple of things, but connection is a big thing. So connection is a huge part of parenting. And so sometimes it's connection that's missing. A kid just need more connection. And sometimes it's hard, when you're working and you have a lot of, when you have a job and limited amount of time and several kids, and you have to do everything else in the house, it's not always easy to connect. But connecting is not necessarily take hours either. But so, we explore connection. There's control. Children needs a little bit of control. And same thing in some traditional parenting, we don't like to give too much control to the kids. And control means that we can also let them fail, which we don't like to do that either, because we love to rescue our kids. I mean, I know I've rescued my oldest way too much as he was growing up, and I wish I had known before. Because so rather than imposing our own consequence and punishing our kids and taking stuff away from them, it's teaching them natural consequence. Well, if you choose that path, this is what happened, and let it happen. And so it's not nice. It's not, just not. And so it's exploring tools like that, and exploring what tools work for your family or what tools work for other family, because maybe if I tell you, no, you know, for example, you tell me, well, I'm having conflict constantly to get my kids do their homework, and probably my first response was going to be, well, why is it so important to you that he does his homework? And we're going to have this conversation, and you know, I'm going to maybe challenge you, saying, well, how would you feel about letting him not do his homework? And some family, it's going to be absolutely not, I can't do that, I need my kids to. And then we'll explore other routes. Or you'll be like, okay, well, what can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? And we explore that route and see. So it's journey about finding the right strategies that are going to work according to also respecting your belief and your values. Because I can't, if I'm telling you something that's completely against what you believe, it's just not, you know, you're not going to be able to work with to implement it. It's just not going to work. But there's different way to give kids control, for example, and they do need control. Children they need connection. They need a sense of mastery or control, and autonomy. They need those three things to thrive. And so it's together exploring what does it mean for you according to what you're comfortable with, that we can do in those areas.
Yeah, you told something that for me it's really important. It's to let sometimes the children fail, to let them fall, and sometimes parents tend to not letting him do that. And it's interesting because I remind myself a couple of years ago, my daughter was struggling in school, and so the teachers asked me, you have to help her, you have to help her, but she was struggling and she was not motivated, and so she didn't want to work. So what I did was I let her fall, and I let her have bad grades so that she could feel it and she could understand that if she didn't work for that, she would never get to the goal that she had for herself. So it was interesting, and of course that afterwards I had to help her to stand up again on her feet, and to overcome her frustration, her difficulties, and lack of motivation. So I think that you touched in a very important point there, that sometimes parents in their best, how to say, in their best intention, are just not letting the children fall as much as they need to learn how to overcome difficulties.
And the best way we can teach our kids to become resilient and to learn, right? But it's super hard. It's really hard. It's hard to see our kids suffer. It's hard to see them sad. It's hard to see them frustrated. And so we want to help, and we have all this experience more than they do. So I'm going to jump in. But the reality is, every time you jump in, well, first of all, it's your experience, and the experience is different whether we like it or not. They're their own person. They're not you, meaning me. They're their own person. So their experience is going to be different from yours. I'm not saying against that you can't share, you know, what you think and your belief and your value. But again, the more you role model them, the more they're going to see it. So if you model hard work in your family, they're going to see it. But they're going to have the time where maybe they don't want to work. And I think what you managed to do with your daughter was probably really hard, but really brave. But I'm sure that when she was ready to get back up on her feet, and maybe she needed your help, but I'm sure it was a lot easier for you to then help her, because if it was coming from her versus from you, you know, mommy, I need help, she's more likely to listen to you and to let her, you know, hold out your hand and pull her back up, versus if you the one deciding, you know, to rescue or what to do, because then it becomes a power struggle, and then it's a lose-lose situation, versus, you know, maybe let them fail. And again, it's not letting them, it's not giving up on them, but it's like, well, this is what happened. If you don't work, you get that grade. That's what happened. And them understanding that feeling from inside about, well, that doesn't feel really good, and that's not the way I want to feel. That there is nothing that's going to be more powerful for them versus you telling them, well, this is how you're going to, you know, until they really, it's intrinsic, then they're going to, that's how they're going to feel it. And I do believe, to be honest, I believe that kids are born with some kind of intrinsic motivation. I do believe that children are natural learner, But unfortunately, sometimes, whether it's us parents with too high standard or expectation, or it's the schools, or it's, whatever external coach, or I think that sometimes we can we break that intrinsic motivation that they were born with naturally. And sometimes they need to fall or fail to be able to get in touch with it again.
Right. It's interesting. I was going to ask you something and you just mentioned it, which is how do you help parents deal with their high standards and expectations? Because I think that all parents want the best for their children, but sometimes they also want that their children are the best in everything that they try to do in life, either in school, sports, uh, relations, friend relations, in family. So I think that parents expect their children always to behave well and to be the best in everything. So how do you address that status?
Well, so I think again, that's where you need to go a little bit into the insight in like a introspection journey about where is that coming from? Why is that? What's in it for you? Do you want all of that for yourself? Do you want all of that for your children? Because sometimes there's a little bit of, I think we all tend to project a little bit, but my children's behavior is going to reflect on me as a parent, right? So, oh my God, if my child is not behaving perfectly, what does it say about me as a parent? So I do think that we need to make a little bit of work, work a little bit about putting a little bit our ego on the side. Because that's what happened. It's like our ego comes in as a parent, and you want my kids to be the best at this, but have that best. But and I think that would say that would be the first step of the journey, because our kids, they're different, and they who they are. They can't, and why do they need the best at everything? What is it? Is it what's going to bring them happiness? Is being the best what's going to? I mean, is being the best equal being the happiest? I truly don't believe that. But if they can be the best version of themselves, that's what's probably going to make them happy. And that's what your job is as a parent, is not, being the best at everything is too much pressure for them. And what kind of message are we sending as well? So like, because in a child's mind, it's so easy. I'm not saying that's what the parents are saying, but it's so easy for a child to equal, well, I'm lovable if I'm the best in mommy's or daddy's eyes, So, and if I'm not the best, then I'm not lovable or I'm not good enough. And then that's how we go in life, feeling always this lack because we haven't fulfilled our parents' expectation. And so I think there's really some work to do around why the parents feel that way. What's the expectation? Where is the part of the ego? Where is the part that you can let go? And how you hold your kids' hand to become the best version of who they are.
Yeah. And again, you said something that I feel it's really important. And for instance, in my practice, I see that a lot in adults that have some emotional issues, which is the sentence, not being good enough.
Mm-hmm.
How that's, in your opinion, what is the weight of this sentence, not being good enough, in the emotion of a child, for instance, or afterwards in the adult that's projecting that not being good enough in their child?
With the not being good enough is, I mean, I would almost say that, let's put it that way. I don't know a lot of adults that don't have that belief somewhere. Sometimes they will. I'm not saying they will all admit it. Some people will admit it, some will not. But you can see that the behavior comes from compensating the feeling of not being good enough. So at the end, it's here. And that's the thing about this conscious parenting as well, is if you manage to keep, and again, it's never going to be perfect. It's not going to be 100%. But if you manage to raise your kid in a way that you do that in an accepting and not judgmental way, then the not good enough is going to literally, decrease a lot. Now, there might always be a little bit of that, because the not good enough could come from so many different things. If you look at, psychology, like even the attachment theory, I mean, it could be like, you have to separate from your child at one stage in life when they go to school, and that could create a feeling of there's so many, it's so complex that you might never be able to completely get rid of it. But I do believe that you can raise your child in a way that they feel empowered, and they feel that they're good enough, and they feel this unconditional love from their parents, that, even when I'm upset, my mom loved me. Even when even if I don't have the perfect grade, I'm lovable and I'm good enough. Even if I'm not the best in, sports, I'm good enough, because I'm good enough the way, I'm not perfect, but I'm perfect the way I am, basically. So I do think that's where conscious parenting can really help try to minimize that feeling of lack that we all have to a certain extent.
How does it feel to you to see the results after some sessions? Do you feel people changing in themselves and then in their relationship in the family?
Yeah, you can see, like I had families through my workshop, and that will tell you, it's like, oh wow, like it shifts the dynamic of the family. And it doesn't happen overnight, especially if you've been parenting a certain way. I'm going to be very honest, the sooner you start, the better it is, right? Like the sooner when the kids, the younger they are, if you start that when they're young, you can see the impact. And if you start later, like I see with my son, even for me, for example, I mean, I'm still working big time on it. So I've got it's a very different experience if I talk about my family between my 13-year-old, my 6-year-olds, for example, because I've started a lot earlier with the little one. But with family I work with, you do see, well, they do share the shift, and it's lovely to see family saying, oh wow, it's more harmonious, it's more, and also I'm having more joy being a parent, because it's hard to be a parent. I think it's the harder thing. I mean, I think that's the hardest job in the world, personally, because we're so emotionally involved. It's so hard. It's such a, it's not. So, and there's no operational qualification for it. When you enter a job in life, first of all, you did something that parenting a lot of the time is as well, but you work, you get prepared for a job you're going to do. This one, I mean, it's really a lot of, they don't come with a manual, and there's no qualification to become a parent. So it's a hard job. I think it's one of the hardest job. And sometimes when this daily struggle and conflict, it becomes really hard. And so to see that, the dynamic can shift, and it becomes more peaceful and more harmonious, and you see parents who actually are like, oh wow, I'm rediscovering being a parent in a night, like I'm starting, I'm enjoying, I was not liking it, and I'm starting to really enjoy it. Or the relationship with my daughter has completely changed, or it's really, really nice.
Yeah, that's great. You're saying it's the hardest job in the world. I have to agree with you. And it's interesting. I will send you later on a video that a friend of mine sent me a couple of days ago, which was they created a job interview, but they created like if it was a real one. So they sent all these announcements on all this, and people responded, and they were being interviewed in a Zoom interview. And so the guy was saying, would you apply for a job? Well, if you want to accept this job, it's a 24/7 job. So people start looking, okay, and it's for free. And they're like, well, that's not fair. And you have to just be at the disposal of the person you're going to work for the whole time. You have to fulfill their needs. You have to take care of the house. You have to do this. You have to do that. And people were like, no, that's crazy, but how come you can offer a job like that? That's not possible. And it's interesting when they say, well, this job is becoming a parent or parenting. And so all the reaction in people's faces are just like, wow, you're right. I never thought about it. And it's interesting because it is the hardest job in the world, for which we are not prepared ever. Then if you have more than one kid, they are all different, with different
Yes.
needs, with different emotions. So but at the same time, if we do it, in my opinion, in a conscious way, it's such a growing opportunity for us as adults to to deal with them, to learn about ourselves.
Our children, if you prepare to do the journey, which is not easy, our children are I believe, our greatest teacher and master. They are through them we can learn so much about ourselves, and we can solve some past issues, and we can definitely grow if we're ready to take that journey. It's not an easy one, but it's definitely worthwhile.
So, uh, taking the journey, what do you usually say to parents when they when they come to you and say, well, I have this problem, this issue I want to attend in my family, and you tell them about the journey? What do you tell them?
um, well, we start with it, it's not like, again, it's not one methodology fit all.
Okay.
uh, because I need to sense where they're at, right? You have people who come who are very self-aware, and you'll see it in the discussion saying, what this is. And so then that's, you can go quicker. There are parents that come and, the issue is the kid. So if I start the first lesson or lesson session, going, well, what about you? It's not going to fly very well. So it's it's a customized approach depending on where the family is at. Um, and what I like to do is I like to explore. There's a couple of things: exploring where the family is at, uh, where because there's one thing that I think is very important in parenting, and we don't do it very well, is taking care of our own need as well. And so we explore that. It's an easier way to go about what's going on without going, well, let's talk about your trigger and what comes from your childhood. And it's a little bit too much the first session. And again, not everybody's ready to go there, and some parents will never go there. I can't, again, if you're not ready, it's not for me. I can't do that job for you. But so I've got a couple of different approach, again, depending on the level of awareness, but like exploring how much you take care of yourself and you make sure your needs are met is a nice way to start the first few sessions, because it's like the metaphor in the plane: if you don't put your oxygen mask, you can't attend your children. And then I do like to share a little bit of the actually, I don't know if I would call that theory, but yeah, what's happening. Like, I find that for me, I know that when I went down that path, it was like literally a wow, haha moment to learn about the brain of the child. I had no idea that I was asking my child to do things that I was expecting, things that it was just not, they could not possibly do. And so I like to share that because I find it very useful, and it sounds based. So it's not me coming up with crazy stuff about but it's literally, it's science based, about how the brain of children function. And so I really like to share that because I think it's very helpful to then reframe the behavior of your kid when you can understand that actually when this happened, then this happened, and it's just physiologic. It's not, and I find it very helpful for parents to be like, oh, okay, well, you know what, I had no idea. And then the journey really began. And then, it takes a couple of sessions. We also talk about, again, talk about the behavior, where is the issue, where they're struggling with, what the child could be needed, what's missing, what could they, a few strategies they could try. But the goal is eventually to go to, okay, well, what about you? Where, you know, when you start screaming, what's happening? Where is it happening? What comes up? Because at the end of the day, again, you can have strategy in place, you can help your child, and that's going to be efficient anyway, even if a parent doesn't want to go and do the introspection part. But if you understand that there's certain things that, you know, what the children can do and what they can't do, and if they understand a couple of the needs that any child has, that's going to be helpful anyway. But then the real powerful work come when the introspection journey starts. And that's going to really varies from family to family.
Yeah.
But that's when you can really change the pattern, because that's when you get triggered, you can be like, oh, that's my own trigger. It's not my kids triggering me. It's me being triggered because it's something coming from before.
Yeah, and it's interesting you're saying that, because sometimes parents bring me their children to my sessions to be helped, because either the children scream a lot, they are anxious, they don't sleep, etc., etc., etc. And so most of the time there is nothing wrong with the child. And so I remember the first time that I addressed the mother saying, okay, your child has nothing wrong. And she was shocked, like, but how? He behaves like this and like that. And I say, okay, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
What are you struggling? And she was shocked, looking at me saying, what about me? I have nothing wrong. The problem is with my child. And so, and I remember this because it was the first time that I had to address a parent to look at himself or herself in this case. And then I proposed to her so that we could work together in a few sessions to help her out deal with the child. And it was interesting because she accepted to do that work, and there was a huge shift in the behavior of her son. And it was really interesting, the work that we did together, and her discovery of herself, of some very ancient trauma and a lot of things that she was not even aware of. So
Right.
it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think that's a very useful starting point.
Well, I would say that a lot of the time, the first contact will be about a child's behavior, but I end up working in the end with the parents, right? Because the child is usually fine, actually. The child just needs the parents to shift in the way they approach the behaviors, and then in order to do that in a real transformational way, they need to look at what's going on inside them. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but that's where the true transformation comes from.
Yeah, that's for sure. Audrey, we passed an hour in this fantastic conversation. I would love if you could just give a final message to the people who are looking and listening to this interview. What would you like to leave as a message?
What would I like to leave? I'd like to say, the more we can come from love versus fear when we are children, the more powerful and helpful we're going to be for them. And in order to do that, we need to go and explore where our own fears are coming from. So my final role would be, in order to raise our kids, we first need to raise ourselves.
And I think that is a very, very, very powerful message. And I'm pretty sure that some people will just think about that. And I hope that this interview just brought awareness to those who were listening to us, because I think it's important to also shift the paradigm of raising our children so that they can be happier, and we as parents also happy days as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for having accepted this invitation to be here today. And I hope that we can speak again in the future.
Thank you, Betsy. It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.